We sense a soul in search of answers.
Though it really didn't have top-notch competition, Dragon Age Origins was easily the best role-playing game of 2009. It was an interesting return to form for BioWare, but the old formula wasn't aging well, so they wanted to switch things up with Dragon Age 2. The series has returned, but does the new direction with the story and gameplay keep people happy, or do they get all pissed off about it? Why don't we dig in, huh?
Shit, that's not what really happened.
Does that not match the story you've heard, Seeker?
I'm not interested in stories. I came to hear the truth.
What makes you think I know the truth?
Don't lie to me. You knew him even before he became the champion.
This story begins with a story in a story. The framing device for this particular tale is that of interrogation. A dwarf named Varric has been captured by the Chantry, and their seeker is questioning him about the location of the champion of Kirkwall. You play as Hawk, a human who is a Ferelden refugee fleeing the Blight from the first game. From here, your story takes you past the Blight and into the future of the universe, as your legend is born in the Free Marches. As if you couldn't tell from that last thing I said, the storyline of Hawk is centralized on him, or her, and his, or her, family fleeing Ferelden and trying to make something of themselves in the city of Kirkwall. Thus, the story is very personal and focuses solely on the Hawk family and the city-state of Kirkwall and the Free Marches. For those of you expecting a story that branches out all over the country, you're not getting it. The storyline is a lot like Planescape Torment in this regard, where it essentially just takes place in one city, stays there for most of the game, but does have some wanderings here and there. The narrative of this particular title is dark as well. Though there's some levity, it's nowhere near as numerous as it was in Origins. Then again, the story is structured in a way that it's supposed to be dark and sobering. The main plot and story of Hawk's rise to power is mired in the blood of his enemies and the struggles of his family. Too much levity and it would have felt weird. One thing that's a true breath of fresh air is the variation in the companions, though. Throughout fantasy games, people get sick of every dwarf being a Gimli archetype and every elf trying to be similar to Legolas. Kind of annoying. Dragon Age 2 changes things up. One of the toughest warriors is a Tevinter elf named Fenris. Your bow wielder in the party? Varric, a dwarf. On top of that, it's also nice to see that the female characters in this game don't feel like stereotypes either.
I felt the veil shift. You called something here. Are you insane?
Yes, it was blood magic, but I know what I'm doing. The spirit helped us, didn't it?
Sure, demons are very helpful. Right up until they take your mind and turn you into a monster.
BioWare definitely took their shortcomings in the presentation department for Dragon Age Origins to note. The visual side of Dragon Age 2 is much improved from the original game. Textures are much more detailed, the frame rate is much smoother, and the game performs with nary a hiccup. Also, BioWare did one thing that made me jump for joy and scream. The hair on characters actually moves. Finally, a current-gen BioWare game has hair that doesn't stay static like it's being held in place by wood glue. There's a couple of downsides to the graphical presentation, though. First, since the story takes place primarily in Kirkwall and the Free Marches, you're going to see a lot of the same environments. So if you're not a big fan of centralized storylines, you're not going to like the visuals in this game. Another issue is that a lot of the reused motion capture from BioWare titles of this generation is still seen here, and it's really obvious at this point. Granted, I had to go looking for it at certain spots, but still, if I can start to notice it, other people are going to start to notice it as well as they continue to play through the game. It's about time for BioWare to go back to the mocap studio and just start over, especially if they've got Mass Effect 3 coming out this year. Also, this is another thing that bugged me. Why don't I see any tears when someone should be crying? As for the sound design, it goes without saying that these particular developers have a pedigree when it comes to solid voice acting. It continues here. Though I couldn't recall some of the voice actors from previous titles, I will confirm that most, if not all, characters that return from Origins still have their same voice actors. However, the place I believe the game surpasses any of the sound work that BioWare has done up to this point is with the soundtrack. I once said that composer Inon Zur had the most potential of any composer BioWare has worked up to this point, and I think he's hit it. The soundtrack of Dragon Age 2 is perfect for the game. It's appropriately somber when it needs to be, appropriately epic when it needs to be. Every song flows, echoes, fades in just the way that it's supposed to within the course of a video game to bring you into the experience. This is how sound is supposed to be used in video games. Akira Yamaoka set the standard, and I think, honestly, that Inon Zur has matched it. Combat in Dragon Age 2 is quite a bit more engaging than that of its predecessor. Now, I can only speak for the console version because I'm not a PC gamer, but to be quite honest with you, you wouldn't expect having to hit a single button for every attack to change things up at all, but the slight shift makes playing the game on a console so much more fun. Essentially what BioWare did in-game was take the old console system and tailor it much more for the console gamer, rather than feeling just like a haphazard PC port. Another thing that's fantastic about this, aside from just the more active combat, is that strategy has now been tailored for the console gamer. And thank God for it. I have not seen a real-time battle system in an RPG done this well with this much strategy. Everything is simple. Everything is easy to do at the push of the button. Within 3 minutes, if not less, considering I'm kind of slow, you might be able to set up an entire strategy for a battle easily on a console. It's almost unheard of, and BioWare pulls it off fantastically. Though you can let a battle run on pure AI on easier difficulties and just hack your way to victory, anything beyond that is going to take strategy, and thank God that they finally got it right. Beyond that, item management and crafting has been simplified, but it makes sense within the context of the storyline. Hawke is the only character where you have to worry about every single piece of his armor, whereas other characters can just handle it themselves, but you can still switch their weapons about, and other items that they might wear, like rings, belts, etc. It's not as complex as the last game, but it does just enough to keep the RPG feel of things without falling into the muck of micromanagement. As for the conversation and choice mechanics, they complement the role-playing quite well. Remember, this is a role-playing game, and Western RPGs are usually really good about it. Each choice you make, whether it be sarcasm, saint, or angry bastard, will define Hawke as a character. However, the improvement seen from the game that the mechanic is based on, Mass Effect, is the role-playing is much smoother due to the fact it's not being slowed down by a morality system. It makes it much easier for someone to slip themselves into Hawke's armor and project himself onto him or her. Also, every choice you made in this game and the prior game will have an impact as the game continues to go on, so the player truly feels like they have an effect in the Dragon Age universe. You know, I've spent the better part of this review glowing about Dragon Age 2, and for good reason. The game is incredibly well made, and from a mechanical standpoint, it's superior to the original. That point cannot be argued at all, and anyone who argues with me is wrong. However, due to the fact that the storyline is so dark, and much of the sarcasm and levity of the original has been gone, traded for a much darker story in this one, I can't see as many people liking it. The game is fantastic, but I cannot recommend it for everyone. So, I give this game a 9 out of 10, but I say rent it first. Try it out. Now, I use the Planescape Torment reference for a reason. Like Torment, Dragon Age 2 is excellent, but not everybody's going to like it. Just give it a rent first. For the full write-up, visit blisteredthumbs.net.